Hey there guys, so here's the drone again, and all I've done in this scene so far is I've made a new scene, and I've imported this drone into it, and all I'm going to be doing with this drone is I'm just going to be using it as a reference, right? So I just kind of need it for guidelines. So I'm going to make sure that this box fits in this area here. Now this video is going to be going over the tools and just generally modeling this package. So without wasting too much time, let's get to it. So the first order of business is to make sure that this box fits into this drone. So let us select this box here, right? Well, as soon as it's selected, press Tab. And once you press that, you're in the edit mode. And now you can press Control Tab to get into the face mode. And what we're going to want to do is select these two polygons and now scale them on Y. So when I press S on the keyboard, it's going to take me into scale, and of course when I'm moving my cursor around, you'll notice that it's going to scale it uniformly, and of course we don't want that. We want to be scaling it on the y-axis, or on the green over here only, right? So we want to constrain the scale towards that axis. So while you are in the scale tool, make sure you press Y, and that's going to constrain you to Y. And now that that's done, once you get it to where you need to, press left click and that will complete your transformation. Now, as you can see, of course, this box wasn't centered exactly around the drone because the drone itself is not centered. So in this case, what I'm going to do instead of scale for the next step is to move. So right click to select the single polygon and use this handle, left click on it and move it to where you need it to go, or at least where it needs to go. Now, I'm not worried about intersecting here because there is going to be a bevel on this edge later on. So that's going to actually closer fit this box to this, this rounded shape that we have at this corner on the drone. And I'm going to do the same thing to the back. So right click to select the back and move it to where I need it to. And of course, same thing to the top. I need to make sure that it fits nice and snug. And I think the first step is pretty much done. So next, we want to add a bevel to this box. So we're going to go into edge mode, right? So while you are in edit mode, right, as long as you can select these faces, you're still in edit mode. We want to go to Control Tab and this time select edge. And we're going to then press A to select all the edges on this model, and now we're going to run a bevel tool. Right, so zoom into an area like this, for example, where I know that there is a sort of like curvature that I want to match to some degree, right? I don't have to be 100% precise, but I kind of want to be in the ballpark, right? So once I've selected all the edges, I'm going to Control B and go into the bevel tool and drag my mouse left and right, and of course once I get kind of like the distance that I like, now I can use the scroll on the mouse up and down, right, to add more segments to the actual bevel. And usually 2 or 3 is pretty good. The more you have, the tighter the bevel is going to become as far as when you later subdivide the model. So 3 is usually a pretty good amount. And then when you left click and let go, is going to commit that tool. Now, right now, you notice that there's all these like little hard edges, right? So each individual polygon is visible. If you want this to appear more smooth, then what you're going to have to do is go into the tools. So if you follow my mouse, go into tools, and under here there's shading, right? So right now we are in flat, but if you set it to smooth, it will in fact correct that and make it nice and smooth. Now the next thing that I like to do is, especially when working on objects that have symmetry, is to define the lines of symmetry, right? So in this case, what I want to do is, see this blue axis, this z-axis, I want to split the model straight down the center. So I'm going to be using a loop object. And the reason why I want to do that is because I want to split the object down the center and then mirror it over and have this mirror exist while I'm modeling only one half. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a loop cut and slide. Now that tool is found under, if you go follow my mouse, right, go to tools and then go to loop cut and slide. Now, if you hover over any one of the tools for just enough, it'll usually give you a shortcut that exists. In my case, it's Control, Shift, and right mouse. Right? So if I just hover over here, Control, Shift, right click, the first thing that it'll do is it'll give me a preview of the edge loop that it'll insert, right? So if I hover over the model, you'll notice that it'll give me a preview of the edge loop that I will get if I left click, right? So I'm going to commit to this edge loop. Now this is a multi-stage tool, right? So the first step is to set up where you want the loop to be, right? And then the step after that will be to slide and do all sorts of things like that. And then after that, you'll be able to set things like number of divisions and so on. So I'm going to left click, okay, and that puts me into slide. And there's a few functionalities here. So first thing you'll notice is that as I'm sliding, if I keep sliding, it'll terminate, or it'll meet the edge loop over at the next existing loop, right? So all the points will come and it'll just stop. If I press Alt, right, while sliding, it'll actually allow me to go past that line. If I press Control, it'll snap the values. Now I know that it's snapping because when I'm looking at the bottom left corner to the status bar, I'm noticing that the values are 0, 0.1, 0.2, 0.34, and so on. If I let go, you'll notice that I'm getting all sorts of decimal values. Now if I press Shift, it'll give me greater precision, so you'll notice that I'm moving the mouse a lot more, and yet the edge loop is moving a lot less, right? So I'm actually getting more precision to that. Now the next step for me is to right click. Now when I right click, so here's what I could do. If I left click, it'll commit the edge loop exactly in this location. If I right click, it'll leave it at 0. Okay, and this is pretty much what I want. I want to cut it right down the center. So let me do that again over in this section. So Control Shift, right? And then place and right click to leave it exactly here. Now at this point, what I could do is I could middle click to navigate around. Now one thing that you'll notice is that when you're using the edge loop tool, you cannot actually navigate around, right? Because your mouse is locked to, like when you're moving your mouse, it's dictating where the loop will exist, right? Or like where you, first of all, where you want to start the loop and then where you want to slide it to. So when you're doing those two operations, it's locking you to, or at least it's locking your camera. Now at this point, before moving on and doing anything else, you'll notice that over here, the tool is still active, right? This edge loop is selected and this tool is still active. So at this point, I could actually add more loops. So if I, for example, go to 3, you'll notice that now I have 3 loops, right? Very cool. So this tool is actually quite a complicated tool, right? I mean, there's a lot of functionality within it. But it is a very, very useful tool indeed. So anyways, we have our lines that we're going to be using to cut with and define the symmetry lines. Let's move on to the next part. So in the next part, now we have to actually select and delete this portion before we can mirror it over. So first order of business is Control Tab, choose face. So we're going to be selecting polygons, and then Control left click and start drawing over polygons in order to select them. So I'm just going to do this and select these polygons. Now if I want to, as you can see, I have selected some of the polygons on the other side, which I don't want to do. So Control Shift and just touch those polygons, and that should be sufficient. And then Shift left click to select. So Shift Control left click to deselect, just like that. And that's pretty good, I think. I think we've got everything. Okay, cool. So now, in order to delete, we're going to press X on the keyboard, and that'll bring this pop-up, and in this case, we want to delete faces. Okay, if we selected, for example, vertices, it would delete these vertices along the center line, and then it will leave us with like these polygons being missing. So we just want to only delete what we have selected, and in this case, we are in polygon mode, so let's select our polygons or faces. And now we have that portion of the model deleted. Now, in order to add mirror, what you're going to have to do is, of course, while your object is selected, go over into the modifiers down here, so this wrench, and add a modifier, and go to, where's mirror? Over here. And of course, by default, it adds something like this, which is not what you want, so you're going to have to go into the menu options and turn off X in our case, because we don't want it to be mirroring along this axis. We want it to be mirroring to the other side of Y, right? So if we press Y, you'll get this. So let me stop this chapter right here. Now, we've done a few things in this chapter as it is. I mean, we've made the original primitive, we've shaped it, we've explored the Bevel tool, and then after that we went into the loop, cut, and slide, and all the different ways that that works. And then, of course, after that we did the selection of half the model. We went into some options in there, and then, of course, added a modifier for the first time, which was to mirror the model. So with that said, I'm going to stop here, and I'll see you in the next one.